So the morning of October 7th, when the sirens go off, where were you?
Okay, so I was in bed. It was 8:15, I think, on Saturday morning. Um, Sirens start going off. Honestly, I was in the middle of a dream, and I was like, "No, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not." Whatever. I had a whole thing about like I didn't want to get up. I was like denying the fact that there was a siren. Um, and then there were eight consecutive sirens over the next 2 hours. Um, and then honestly, I fell back asleep. Um, um, like my friends and I, we went down to the bunker in our building. Um, and every time we would come back up, like there were people in the bunker who didn't keep the Sabbath, and they would tell us all these things about how they were kidnapped, and there was like things happening, weird things that we'd never heard before. Um, it was super intense. Um,
So you were really shocked by the scale of this attack.
so then we didn't know the scale. We just were hearing that there were kidnapped, which I was at first. I was like, no, that like it can't be. How does that happen? Um, and and then I'm in an EMT in the Magen David Adom, which is the Israeli version of the Red Cross. Um, and so once I had finally woken up, I realized that if there were tons of sirens going on in Jerusalem, which doesn't usually happen, like the south is bombarded by rockets a lot, but if it's happening in Jerusalem, which is usually very protected by Iron Dome, then something's really, really off. So up until then, it was just like rumors. So I understood that maybe something really big was happening, and I turned on my phone on the Sabbath, which I never do because I'm religious, and and I and then I started hearing some reports, and I wanted to see if MADA, the Magen David Adom, if they needed help. At that point, they were just saying that any drivers who were available to come in. I'm not a driver; I'm just a regular volunteer. So I, I even called them to see if they needed me, um, and they said at the moment that they didn't. There's also a huge issue of like keeping if the attack comes to Jerusalem, keeping enough volunteers for also so that Jerusalem is protected too. So there's a lot of things that go into that, but they didn't ask for volunteers, and I think any drivers that went, they brought their own volunteers to come with them and maybe go south. I don't really know exactly. I'm not part of the administration there, so I don't know exactly how they separated who went and who didn't.
Has this war had a personal effect on you, family, friends, anything that, I mean, obviously all of Israel has been devastated by this attack, no question. But what effect has this had on you personally? Could you share that?
Yeah. So in Judaism, we're all considered to be responsible for one another. So, I mean, everywhere I go, somebody's been impacted in some way or the other. The degree that I was supposed to start and didn't start because all universities are closed because of this. So I was supposed to move to Beersheba the week of the attack. So that didn't happen. But in the degree I was supposed to start, people died. In Mada, so like the first night of the war, the night that they started attacking, I went to volunteer in the logistics, in the storage where we give out equipment for ambulances, and I was there all night because during war we need it to be open all night so that we can give out helmets and things. So one of the volunteer heads came in and he's like, "Oh wait, sorry, was it that night? Maybe the next morning." I think he had already heard of a few deaths of friends. Later on, I heard he had to go to like 20 funerals. Me personally, like my family isn't Southerners, so we don't. I don't think anybody in my family. But now, I mean, most of my cousins are in the army right now. Not in the army, like they were conscripted for this war because they had been in the army as kids. Um, for me, I mean, for me, it became really personal. I mean, I think it's personal for every Jew. I don't think there's any Jew who could just say this isn't about us because it's nothing to do with land. It's nothing to do with anything. It's literally just hatred, and hatred of Jews is literally worldwide, as we're seeing now. I mean, Australia had Gas the Jews rallies. In New York, there were the pro-Palestinian rallies that are quote unquote pro-Palestinian have swastikas everywhere. Like even if you're pro-Palestinian, had a swastikas figurine. And I'm seeing that literally everywhere. A Nicaraguan Jewish cemetery was destroyed. I don't know. It's never ending, but
Yeah, the anti-Semitism that we're seeing worldwide is truly unbelievable. In London, we've had marches 100,000 strong, even 500,000 strong, all of them pro-Palestine, and really pro-Palestine in this sense, it's hatred against Israel and hatred against the Jews. What do you have any thoughts about what can we do about all of the anti-Semitism that we are seeing?
I really wish I knew. Unfortunately, this isn't new for any of us. Um, it might be new in this extent in our generation. Although I met French people from 10 years ago. They moved to Israel because they had experienced anti-Semitism. I was on a bus once in Canada and I experienced anti-Semitism. Um, you know, some guy just started yelling about Jews, and we were like schoolgirls in uniform. Um, so wherever we go, I mean, so my grandfather from my mother's side, he's Greek. He lost his family, most or a decent amount of his family, to the Holocaust. He brought in as many people as possible. He paid for their tickets to come to Israel, um, and therefore he saved quite a bit too. But he lost a lot of his family. So, you know, um, we were killed then. And then before, the way we got to Greece is because they had originally been from the Spanish Inquisition. So we speak Ladino, we speak a form of Spanish. Um, and, you know, they were kicked out of there. I mean, too. Fortunately, it's too long ago to know exactly like how that affected my family. I just know that we are from originally from Spain, at least from my mom's side. On my dad's side, Persian, and he had to leave Persia because I actually don't know, so I'm not gonna claim, but but I think there was some anti-Semitism involved. I'm not sure. Actually, I think the Shah was pro the Jews, and then he was about to be like exiled or something. So they sent. So he told the Jews to leave. That's what my dad says, but he was a child then, so I don't know much.
Well, you know, whether it's Pharaoh and his armies, or whether it's Haman from the Book of Esther, or whether it's Adolf Hitler or Hamas or the Spanish Inquisition, you're right. The history of hatred for the Jews goes back literally thousands of years. And I personally see prophetic significance from the Holy Bible concerning that. Do you have any thoughts concerning the religious nature of this conflict?
Yeah. So I think all the reason for the hatred is religion. That's my personal belief. I think it's forces of bad versus forces. Not that we're necessarily automatically good. I think, but at least I mean we're just trying to be good humans. Nothing more, nothing less. But from what I'm seeing, it's literally just like I think it goes beyond any logic. I don't think logic really has enough space in it. Even what happened on October 7th doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't fit into logic because we have amazing security in this country, and yet they managed to. They say that they broke the fence at 80 places, and that about 3,000 terrorists came through. So I can't see anything of that happening without God just deciding that we needed this. Because he runs the world, and we don't know why. But I think it's woken up. I really hope it's woken up all the rest of the Jews who were asleep. Because I've always thought that, there's no place for Jews except for Israel. I've always thought that, it's the only safe place for us. It's one of the reasons why I made Aliyah, why I moved to Israel. I don't, and now a lot of the rest of the Jews of the world are starting to see that too. And personally, I think that's good. Really bad circumstances, but we need to come together as one nation. Understand that while some people might help us, we have to rely on God, and then rely to protect ourselves.
Concerning this conflict, this war against evil, truly pure evil Hamas, and its resolution, what do you hope to see in the near future?
Wow, that is such a hard question. I think that there's a lot of talk about what should be done, and I think everybody likes to say about what world leaders should do and shouldn't do. I think that so long as we haven't been a world leader and we haven't had those sleepless nights trying to understand what the best thing in life is, and what the best thing for our nation is, for our people, it's so hard for me to say. Because considering what I've said till now, how do you wipe out something that's, in my opinion, pandemic? Like, I don't think it's just Hamas. There were civilian terrorists that came from Gaza on October 7th. They weren't soldiers of Hamas. There were also civilians that came and did horrible things.
And we saw civilians in Gaza celebrating right along with Hamas.
Yeah. And if you consider that every child who went, or every person who went who broke the gates and started slaughtering Jews, if you consider that each of them have 2 parents, and at least some of them support them, then it's far more than just 3,000 terrorists, and it could even be plus another 6,000, right? Plus their parents. It's thousands. And personally, I want peace and health and happiness for anybody who does not want me harm. But anybody who wants me harm, me, my family, my people, I have no problem saying that they deserve nothing more or nothing less than death. I have absolutely no problem with that. I was there in the South. I saw what happened. Not everything, thank God. God protected me from seeing it. No matter how hard I tried to go to certain areas and help out more, I saw. I went, I tried to find all kinds of ways to help, because I thought it was necessary. And the first night I went there, which took me days to even get there because everything was closed. So the first day I spent the night packaging boxes and for food and for families, and the next morning too. And then the next 3 days I spent looking for survivors and bodies in the fields, not in the settlements, because people just ran. Seeing that, going through a valley and not sure if, like, under this bush or right around that tree there's a terrorist, or maybe there's a Jew in need of help, alive, dead, like, I spent 3 days with my hand on my gun, just try, like, walking through thorns in the sun in this fields, just trying to find. We were looking through the tracks, trying to find. We found bloodied shoes. We found missiles. Interestingly enough, there was a missile with cameras on it, like a missile head, that also said Eurotech on it. So that's fascinating. I don't know what
I'd say that's pretty fascinating. I mean, we do know that a lot of the weapons that Hamas has received, it doesn't originate in Gaza. It comes from outside sources. So
So I took a picture of it even, so I'm not making it up. We found drops of blood. We found tracks in all kinds of different fields. And then finally, 3 days of work, I only found one person. He had unfortunately been killed on the 7th of October. He had biked away from the massacre. We found him in a valley, like in a field. That was there's a psalm that says, and there's a song about it too. When I walk in the shadow of the valley of the shadow of death. Right?
Psalm 23. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So you know better than me.
Yeah.
So I won't fear, and that's where I found him, and it was a valley, and I found this man who I had the picture of him because we'd gone there from locating his phone. Actually, well, phone, or also he had a locator thing because he was a biker. And we had the picture, and I couldn't even recognize him. If it wasn't for the bike, we wouldn't have known it was the same person. Let's say he was from the picture, he's about a 56-year-old man, white, skinny. Once we found him, he was none of those things. And we couldn't understand, even because the victim was so far gone. We couldn't even understand how he had died, and there were like suspicious circumstances. So something that made me think that perhaps he was killed there, as opposed to shot in the settlement, the village. I refuse.
Settlement, village.
I refuse to call it a settlement.
Okay. Yeah, a town.
So we couldn't tell if he'd been killed there, as in if he was shot, because we found drops of blood on the bike, and we couldn't tell if he had been shot, and then managed to bike all the way there before he died. But something about the way we found the victim made us think that perhaps he might have been killed there. So we're in this valley, and then above the valley is huge fields with no one and nothing around, but we're still not sure if he was killed there, which means that maybe there's a terrorist hiding around the corner too. So I take my gun and I start walking in the valley, deeper in, looking through every piece of shrubbery, because I am highly aware of that people, when they're hiding, they will hide into any little corner, any crevice, in order to save their lives. And I start walking, and then I'm thinking of that psalm, and I'm thinking that that's psalm, and I'm walking in the shadow of the valley of death, and which I'm really feeling. And then the rest of it is, and I won't fear, and I don't fear, and I didn't fear because of that. I felt like it was prophetic. I felt like it was exactly where I was supposed to be. Till this day, I feel like I have a connection to this man. I don't know how to explain it. There were also, somebody gave a warning that there would be, bombings there and shootings. And so they wanted to clear out, and I just refused. I started getting very upset. I told them, no, there's no way in hell. And I couldn't leave him. So from then I felt a connection, and until today, I feel a lot of love in my heart for this man. I don't know why, but
well, it's every experience that I've personally had among the Jewish people is the spirit of the Jewish people, is the spirit of love. It's a spirit of hope and joy. It's a spirit of peace. That's what I've encountered for myself. And as you said before, that's what you desire for everybody. You desire peace.
We try. We're not perfect. We try so hard. We try, and you give us many warnings before we send any rockets. And we try doing everything to avoid any civilian casualties. And people are just ignoring that, and they themselves they put their civilians
Right.
in harm's way purposely. They
Yes.
found tunnels under mosques and rockets under mosques and under the hospitals and over schools they put, like, under schools they put this stuff. And like, what are we supposed to do? So everybody who says, you know, that we are, you know, not doing right, just tell me. I would love to hear. I haven't heard yet one viable suggestion as to what a response to that day was supposed to be. And what's interesting is that at least the people who are actually believing what happened today are saying, wow, I didn't realize they could do those things. What's interesting to me is that way before this, we've had terrorist attacks. We have terrorist attacks in Israel. I've been here for 9 years. On average, an attempt or an attack about once every week, 2 weeks. And I know because I lived in areas. Okay, I lived in the old city, which is, you know, the year I lived here, literally 2-3 times a week sometimes. I actually saw somebody right there stabbed. Last week, I mean, I work in the old city, and last week we had a somewhat police officer. It's called Magav, but we had a girl who had come to Israel, moved to Israel too, and she was murdered last week. She was stabbed. The week before that, we had another stabbing of another police officer that I think he's still alive. But what's interesting is that, you know, they're saying, oh, they killed women and children and babies. They slaughtered babies. They dismembered the babies. Like, so, but even I think about a year or two ago, there was a woman who was standing at a intersection in the West Bank. Pregnant woman just standing there waiting for a ride. And she was slaughtered too. This was way before October 7th. Now, everybody was saying, oh, that's like a lone wolf. No, these aren't lone wolves. They're being raised this way. From what I saw that there was a poll that showed that 60% support of Hamas in the West Bank, or Gaza, I'm not sure. So, like,
it goes back to what we were saying about the civilians in Gaza. They were celebrating right along with Hamas.
And in Ramallah, and in Jenin, and in Shuafat, they found a huge weapons cache. Huge, you know. And I mean, I have a connection to the police. I'm constantly hearing how there's like viable threats, and the amount of threats that we've dismantled since the beginning of this war, so about a month and a little bit, is insane. So no, it's not 5,000, which is, in my opinion, already an endemic issue. It's far more, and in my opinion, it's pandemic. And then one of my final points, they're saying, you know, the amount of people that they claim died, and perhaps that's true. Are they including the 3,000 terrorists that came in that day and butchered people, or is that in addition? Because I'm pretty sure that they're including it. In addition to the fact that from what I hear, about 20% of the rockets that they've sent to Israel, which there's been at least about 7,000, so that makes at least about 1,400 rockets, fall back onto their land. Because, I don't know, they don't know how to make good rockets. I don't know why.
Their own rockets destroyed one of their hospitals. We saw that.
That's true. But the Palestinian Authority doesn't say that that's why the death happened. They just claim, oh, more people died from this. More people died because of the Israelis. Which is just flat out lie, in my opinion. Yeah. You know, yeah. I think people need to start looking at the numbers. They need to start actually asking questions as to opposed to those numbers. You know, if like in Gaza, it's so horrible what's going on. How is I heard of a report that 9,761 or something deaths. How do you get to such a specific number if you're running for your life? Right? Like, also the videos you see in Gaza, like, there are some videos, where you see total neighborhoods decimated. There are also videos where you see one building in that neighborhood being bombarded because they know, and they also warn them ahead of time. Not, I don't know if every time, but we try. And we warn them ahead of time, and there are other buildings around that are totally fine. So it's not like we're going in and doing what people are claiming. Also, please stop using the word genocide, because that's not what it means. Even if we were to kill all of them, which God forbid, I really do not, none of us want that, but that would still not be a genocide. It would be a war. That's kind of how war works, right? Obviously, you know, you try and kill combatants, but here the combatants are everywhere. But we're literally just trying to fight a war, okay? There's no concept of genocide. We have Arabs in our country, in Israel proper. There are Arabs everywhere. I work with Arabs daily, okay? So nobody can say that it's a genocide. I've treated Palestinians, myself, I've treated Palestinians for the past 8 years. Okay? It's not a genocide. If it were a genocide, we wouldn't be treating them. If it was a genocide, then when terrorists would come to kill us, well, if we shoot him directly and he dies, that's one thing. But if he doesn't die, then we try and save his life. That is not called a genocide. Please, people, use proper terminology, because that's just not the definition.
The only genocide is from them towards the Jewish people, because they do desire the extermination of Jews.
Yeah,
I mean, from their own charter, they call for the extermination of Israel.
Yeah,
That,
many Arab countries.
That is the genocide.
I mean, as far as I understand, many people in Arab countries desire that. And it really, it's also like the amount of countries in this world, in this planet, that have committed genocides or, you know, massive like exiles of Jews is quite a bit. So for those citizens afterwards to come and tell us that we're doing it wrong because they have no stake in this war, whereas our stake is our lives and our existentialism.
Your very survival.
Like, you cannot, you have no ground to stand on, okay? Putin has no ground to stand on, all right? North Korea, no, I don't know, China, please. Like, you really just, Spain, Germany, I mean, I don't know what you guys are saying, but quite a few countries. And you know, Italy, there was a time when they were supremely anti-Semitic. Merchant of Venice is based off of things that were happening at the time. Please look at history and then call us genocidal.
Yeah, when one of the most diabolical dictators on planet Earth, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, when he sides with Hamas and supports Hamas, you'd think that that may be a red flag to help open people's eyes that you might be cheering for the wrong team here.
Yeah. Or Putin, who's waging a war against Ukraine for, does anybody understand why? He, like, where on God's green earth does he believe that he has the right to claim anything in this war? And yeah, and North Korean leader, like,
yeah.
I really think everybody should just go back to their own borders, all right? Take care of your own people. You know, maybe stop destroying your own countries and then come and talk to us about our country. Because we actually try, all right? We treat Palestinians, we live amongst Palestinians many times and Arabs, and literally every wall that's ever been put up, everything that's ever been done has literally been to counteract what's going on. Terrorist attacks consistently, okay? Before that, there wasn't a wall. Then there were more terrorist attacks. We put up a wall. Like, I don't understand why that's complicated. And if any country were to do this to America, America would obliterate, and we've seen that happen, all right? And if any country were to do this to Germany or Spain or North Korea, they would absolutely obliterate them. So I'm done listening to people trying to tell me what's right.
Well, I've seen that for myself, is that for the most part, when the world sees Muslims killing Muslims, they don't care. When Muslims kill Jews, it's considered to be a tragedy. But when Jews then defend themselves and kill Muslims, in this case terrorists, that's when everyone seems to freak out. Any thoughts on why that might be? just back to the anti-Semitism,
Back
maybe?
to the anti-Semitism. Also, the Muslims killing Jews, that's barely even a tragedy because it's righteous, because they have the right to. All right?
Certainly within Islam, yeah.
They have the right to. No, also according to the rest of the world. You know what? I really don't care. Like, we will protect our borders from any threat. At least we will try. And anything that, you know, isn't protected, that's God. Also, honestly, all of this is God. So he dictates what happens, whether they succeed or not, whether we succeed or not. I lift my hands up, but I would really...
God forbid that they succeed. And I would say, God bless Israel and the Jewish people.
Thanks, amen. And everybody, I mean, just, like, I mean, we'd all like to live in peace, for Pete's sake. We have normal lives like the rest of us, like the rest of the world. We want to eat, get married, you know, have children, be happy, be sad too, but like, I don't know. I think Shylock said it quite well in Merchant of Venice, you know. Not the beginning, but if you starve us, will we not die? Like, we're just normal. So stop pricking us and then expecting us not to have any consequences. And to anybody who thinks that we could be doing better, I think we would love to hear suggestions that are valid and won't end in our annihilation. So yeah, you're welcome to send suggestions.
Hey, you've been wonderful. Thank you so very, very much.
You're very welcome.
God bless you.
Thanks, you too, sir.